Hey, disruptors and catalysts. Welcome to Founders Arena Podcast, the podcast where we help founders hurdle the challenges of early stage ventures. We're your hosts. I'm Carla Cangleon.
And I'm Mac Comandante, and today we will talk about harnessing the power of AI for startups. Our guest is Alan Tan. Alan is a highly accomplished technopreneur and an AI engineer with a proven track record of innovation. He is the founder and chief AI strategist, scientist of Predictive Systems, a company that is dedicated to helping businesses thrive through ethical and high performing AI solutions.
And Alan's journey includes founding Idea Tech, acquired by Monster Lab, serving as a board director of PSIA, and mentoring startups through Founder Institute Manila. His commitment is continuous to learning as evident in his pursuit of a master's in data science at the Asian Institute of Management. And he shares his insights on AI through his YouTube channel, Artificially Intelligent. So please help me welcome Alan on stage.
Okay, welcome, Sir Alan. We're gonna give you the stage now.
Thank you,
Let
Mac
me
and Carla. Happy to be here. Excited to share some ideas and thoughts on AI for startups. Okay. So, in this session, I'm going to share with you some tips, advice, how to take advantage of AI, and also explain where the current state of AI is so that you know how you can take advantage of AI into your startup. Specifically, we'll talk about, building applications with or your startups with AI. So, I wonder how many of you actually know this person. Surprisingly, not a lot of the people, whenever I go out to talk, knew Andrew Nang. But for your information, Andrew Nang is actually the founder of Coursera. He's a prominent figure in the field of AI. He's currently, with Google DeepMind, with Amazon AWS. So he's at the forefront of AI. And he says this, statement actually 2 years ago, stating that AI is just like electricity. Okay, whenever you see where electricity is being used now, right? In this podcast, in watching this session, when you go out, you drive a car, you go to the malls, everything uses electricity. That's where AI will be in the future. So imagine the potential of using AI opportunities that you can take if you're able to integrate AI into your systems, what kind of transformation you can actually do into the different industries and business problems that many of these industries are already facing. So to start off, I'd like to explain to you what the vision of Andreessen Horowitz. Andreessen Horowitz, as you may know, is one of the largest venture capital in the world, and its abundance agenda shows a very good picture of the potential areas where AI can be useful. So the abundance agenda is talking about where AI can impact us in terms of creativity and productivity, in terms of companionship and social, in terms of wellness and personal growth. So when we talk of creativity and productivity, we are talking giving people the ability to sing, right? To act, to express yourself through music. Even when you do not have the right skill to draw good art, you'll be able to still express yourself. No, so these are the sub possibilities of being able to use AI. And now, as you probably have experienced, you'll be able to write code, build applications, even when you do not know how to write programs. No, so that's towards productivity. Those are the potential of AI that could transform different ways of doing things. In terms of companionship and social, you can read it here. AI can be empathic, it can be patient, it can be your tutor, it can be your mentor, it can also be your romantic lover. Sounds crazy, sounds not feasible right now, but if you look at, say, same-sex relationship, which was taboo 20, 30 years ago, we do not talk about that, which is very open now. Similarly, we do not talk, it's practically impossible to imagine having a relationship with a machine. But imagine having these young kids grew up with ChatGPT when they're having trouble with their assignments, when they're having problems at home. It's not, impossible to imagine that they might grow up very accustomed to them and growing up with them and having a more intimate relationship with them. This just opens up our imagination on what's possible. Of course, I do not promote this kind of relationship, but then again, these are things that could change and transform, where we're going. Then we talk of wellness and personal growth. We're talking of democratizing healthcare, education, right? Being able to give high quality education to people in the far-flung areas because now you have an AI who can tutor, who is patient, and who can teach. Being able to provide quality healthcare, right, in the far-flung areas. Doctors from Harvard, from Stanford, or St. Luke's, and top premium healthcare facility. The same knowledge is now possible with the use of AI, and we can be able to serve better healthcare for our barrios and barangays where traditionally wouldn't be possible. So these are some of the possibilities of where AI can transform the different industries. This is one example of using Bolt, right? If you notice, I only type booking system and it will already start creating the program. Now, if for those who are programmers here, you'll see that starts writing prompt. This is what you call vibe coding. We'll be able to create programs by just prompting with simple natural language. In this case, 2 words, booking system. Now, you'll notice it starts to write code. These are JavaScript codes. And then eventually, we will encounter an error in a few seconds. So once, okay, then it starts to run yet. Then you'll see the error page, right? So when you counter the error page, the AI now is also smart enough to give you an option to fix the problem, right? So if you'll notice, there's a temp fix button here, and if you actually click it, it will recognize what the error and try to fix the problem. So now it will try to rewrite, putting into context what was the error that occurred and try to fix the problem, because now it has the error message. So it said it tried to fix the problem. Unfortunately, for the second time around, it did not yet fix the problem. So let's try to be a bit patient. Ask it to fix it again. And then it will try to do the same thing. Okay, this is the second time I'm fixing it. Very much like just a programmer, right? The first time you write it, there's an error, you fix the error, and then until it actually works, and now you have a booking system. Notice, we only took less than 3 minutes to get something as simple as this out, right? Which traditionally will probably take 4 hours for a programmer to build something like this. Now it's so much possible. And this is only 2 years after ChatGPT, or the transformer model ChatGPT, came out. Right? Now imagine the possibilities, how much smarter can AI go in the next couple of years. Talking about relationship, this is an article in Wall Street Journal where the author actually flirted with the AI. And surprisingly, the AI flirted back. At a point, the discussion got a bit steamy, right? Downright X-rated kind of discussion. And then OpenAI suddenly stopped responding, realizing that, wait, these topics, the AI should not reply anymore. No? So if you try it now, if you're lonely and you're looking for, something to have, something, to play around with, it might not respond anymore because OpenAI has put guardrails into it such that it wouldn't respond anymore. But then, last year, there's this art journalist who actually flirted with it. This means that the AI can actually understand romantic relationship. It just appears not so now, because we're putting guardrails into it. Because we want to avoid that thing to happen. But it doesn't mean deep inside it does not know. Deep inside it knows. Just as shown in this article. We're just stopping it from responding to those kind of... But then, the AI actually understands that. So imagine if you have a more open type of model, what the possibilities could be. Now, of course, you'll have to consider the ethical impact of doing, things like that. Then you talk of medicine, right? Democratizing healthcare. This is actually an article way back, 2024, which is a year ago, which in the field of AI, this is ancient, where you'll be able to talk to the AI and put in some pictures. You put your symptoms, it will be able to diagnose your condition. And they're getting very good results, right? As shown is here, the latest, or this is not the latest, this is March 2024. It was already reaching 91% accuracy in terms of MedQA. Now, we probably won't be seeing this kind of technology anytime actual in production yet, because healthcare is a highly regulated industry. So if you have any intention of actually putting up a startup in the healthcare industry, you always have to take note also what are the regulatory requirements to actually bring something like this out into production, right? So these are some of the, I guess, restrictions or limitations that we need to be aware of in our startup. It's a hurdle, right, that we have to overcome. It's a very tough hurdle that we have to overcome, but once we overcome it, it becomes a valuable asset as a startup for us, because then it becomes a moat, because your competitors will have a hard time also getting accreditation or FDA approval on their solutions. This is a study of McKinsey on AI in the workplace, stating that employees are actually using AI more even when they are not allowed at work. This puts actually certain companies at risk because now, even when, now that, if you do not give them the proper tools, your employees are using them anyway, right? And they might be using it improperly. So it puts the companies more at risk. So you might as well embrace it and give proper guidelines and policies to employees so that they be able to use it properly according to what you feel or what you think is the proper use depending on which industry you're in and of your business. Globally, if you look at the adoption, we'll see that a lot are in the emerging and developing. So there's a lot of opportunities. It's a matter of, who will be able to roll out something that is production grade, that is of high quality, reliable, that your clients will actually be able to use. No? But this is a big ocean where we'll be able to explore and deliver new things. Another interesting insight from Deloitte showing that while most of leaders expect AI to reduce costs, to improve productivity, there are actually other benefits that were achieved in terms of uncovering new ideas, innovation growth, and better client relationship, right? So leaders weren't expecting that. Leaders were always thinking, we'll improve productivity, make everyone more productive with AI. But then again, surprisingly, it's not only in terms of productivity, but it's also coming up with newer ideas. I'm sure you understand why, right? Because when you talk to ChatGPT, it has a lot of newer ideas which you haven't really thought of. And the good thing is 74% of those who experimented are able to get the returns. So it means it's easier to sell. We'll be able to build solutions. You invest this much, you'll be able to recover your investment, as shown in this study by Deloitte. Now, one thing we need to be worried about is the hallucination, because while it's being successfully being rolled out, a lot are kind of concerned because of the mistakes and errors that this AI are bringing us, which we know as hallucination. So 35% are worried about that. So if you are going to build AI solutions, one thing you need to consider is how are you going to address hallucination? I think at this stage, it's kind of impossible or hard to reduce or to eliminate hallucination, right? But then you need to find ways so that your application will be able to trace the information back so that the users will be able to verify if the information being churned out by the AI is actually correct. What we need is to give them this confidence that they can trust the system and that they have a way to actually verify the information that is being brought about. So that's usually how you would want to address hallucination, because it's hard to really eliminate them, right? So you probably want to reduce them and make sure that there's a traceability where they will be able to find or understand why the AI suggested such recommendation. Now, if you're looking into at least a frame of mind where you want to put AI, you can think of it as an offense or a defense. An offense is a solution that can increase your sales and generate more revenue, while a defense is something that can reduce the cost and improve productivity, right? Because by putting that certain frame of mind, you'll be able to focus where your solution should work. What do you want? You want to focus on AI more on marketing, improving sales, generating more revenue, coming up with newer ideas, then you're working on an offense type of solution. Or if you are looking towards improving productivity, making people more efficient, then you are on the defense. At least now you get a frame of mind, because approaching the market also depends on whether you are on the offense side or on the defense side. No? So by understanding what problem you're solving gives you a proper context, how you approach the market. Then, most important parts, if you are wondering, so where can AI be useful? I have four key areas where will be able to help you. Number one is which valuable task is hated the most. Tasks that people hate, that's the easiest to automate. Tasks that people love, that's the hardest to automate. Right? Because if people enjoy what they're doing and then you started introducing AI, what will you get? Resistance, complaints, issues, and they will not adopt the solution. But if you are automating tasks that they don't want to do it to begin with, it's so easy, right? Oh, you're helping us, you're making our lives easier, right? So always start with doing things that people hated doing. Second is doing the impossible things. One good example would probably be the AlphaFold of Google, right? Where they try to crack, the human genome, because that kind of task is practically impossible to mathematically compute by humans, even with using computers, traditional computation. It requires some model of AI to make these things more efficient so that, it's humanly, or in our lifetime, possible to be computed by the existing machines, right? Because those kind of solutions can revolutionize different industries, impossible things, which is now possible with the help of AI. Things you can democratize. I've cited example already earlier with regards to healthcare, education, to be able to give better quality to a larger type of population. Things you can personalize. Of course, everyone likes personalized messages, personalized Netflix videos that actually is capturing, your own preferences. So you can look into this kind of solution. So if you are into any specific industry and you're looking into asking yourself your question, where would AI be useful? You want to ask yourself these 4 questions and hopefully be able to find that key ingredient where AI can help. Now let's look into the microeconomics of generative AI. It's important for us to understand so that we know how to position or where the future of AI is going. Let's talk about foundational models first. Foundational model, probably a few months ago, sometime last year, is an oligopoly because everyone's using ChatGPT. Gemini is barely catching up. There's Claude who's doing well, but there are only a few big players who's actually into foundational models. Now that has changed with the introduction of DeepSeek when they started opening up, newer solutions, open source solutions that are cheaper and yet as good as OpenAI. We then move the foundational model starting to move towards perfect competition where everyone will be able to, compete, fiercely, right? Where the competition is not on how intelligent your model is, but how cheap the model is. How is that there will be low switching costs such that a solution that runs on one foundational model can be easily switched over to another model. I'm sure there are people who do not agree with this. Is like the holy grail. If you can have your solution run across different platforms, right? I want to switch from Gemini to Gemma to OpenAI and put certain evaluation and make sure that you can switch easily between these models. You can have a larger base of customers because now your platform can run regardless of the foundational model your clients want to run in, right? So it's okay. So you have a client, we're using Google, right? We're using Gemini. Okay, we can work with Gemini. We just run our evaluation model. We can install our system already. Then you go to another client. We're using Azure. We're a Microsoft, partner. Okay, fine. Then we'll run that on whatever model Azure is supporting. We run evaluation models, and then, you can confidently say that it will still perform just the same regardless of what foundational models you are using. Right? So then move to the microeconomics of building software that are AI driven, which I think is a monopolistic competition. Monopolistic competition dictates that there's a low barrier of entry, but we are able to differentiate ourselves in terms of business. And our differentiation is through the integration of the business process. If we're able to fully integrate AI into a business process and make things more efficient, swiftly, smoothly, without a lot of bottlenecks and a lot of headache, that's where the advantage is. So if you're able to capture a larger market, be able to transform the way things are being done, that's where your competitive edge will come in. So always go back that the foundational models, right? Gemini, ChatGPT, these are commoditized. This will be commoditized. You'll be able to switch from one to the other. Your differentiation is how well you integrate your solution into the business process flow. Now, Gartner is saying that 80% of enterprises will use generative AI into their solution. Meaning, any other software that we are building now should have AI as key component into this type of systems. And this is by 2026. That's like next year already. So if the prediction is correct, then all developers, all applications, or 80% of the applications will have AI already. All the developers should know how to integrate AI, how to take advantage of AI, and maximize that into their business domain. Now, in the Philippines, you can clearly see from Statista, there is a high growth from now until 2020-30, reaching up to $1.3 trillion by then. So there's a lot of opportunity. Now, this chart shows the different aspects of developing AI, or where, so that you get a better picture where AI is and where your company or your startup should focus on. Right? So let's start on the rightmost side, which is our AI users. Right? These are normal users. This is everyone else using AI. They should at least understand how to prompt effectively, how to chat with ChatGPT, understands, their own use case. For example, a lawyer that uses ChatGPT, or a doctor, and be able to prompt this correctly, right? Be able to assess whether the answer is correct, how to verify these answers, and the tools that probably be using are ChatGPT. So these are more for end users. If you're into startup, you probably would be more interested on the ones in the middle, which is into AI integration. So if, for example, you have a CRM system, right? If you want to have a marketing framework as part of your CRM so that it helps your users to build new marketing campaigns, right? You can do AI integration. This is where tools like RAG or vector databases, skills on prompt engineering would be useful, so that it is so much easier for your users now to create marketing campaigns that uses framework that has been scientifically proven to actually work. Right? With just one click, you can have one big idea campaign already in there. Right? You can do a competitive analysis, a competitor analysis. You just one click across different industries with the help of AI, right? And there are certain use cases where that would be. No? Or if you want on the more hardcore side, you can create your own foundational models. But for me, this is probably too technical and too expensive. It doesn't actually make sense for most companies, right? A lot of the successful AI startups are not actually are not building their own foundational model. They are existing models, fine-tuning them to their specific industries, but not necessarily building their own, right? DeepSeek is mentioned to be the cheapest model that, has been researched, and it cost them $5 million. That's not cheap, right? $5 million still a lot of money. But then building your own foundation model could have an advantage if you have specific type of, data where it will be advantageous, then you can look into this. Nevertheless, there's probably very few who will get into building their own foundational models. Then there's data preparation, which can be, a key advantage also, because if you have specific data sets where you can train your AI, then that can be, one differentiator of your company, because you have a large data set, a clean data set, where you'll be able to produce better models. Because as you know, all these AI models, data, then you have a very good AI model. No? So these are some of the technology. Now, the purpose I'm showing this to you is for you to understand where you should focus your startup on. Diba? If you are working on specific CRM, a specific case management, a specific tool, and you just want to integrate, then probably these are the technologies that you'll be needing. If you see yourself more towards, a need for optimization, along with collecting your own data set, so you have a more fine-grained, build a better, stronger moat, then you might want to get into this. Or if you really are hardcore, you want to build your own foundational models. Of course, this goes to say that you really need strong engineers with strong math and logic, architectural foundation knowledge to build things like this. But at least it gives you an idea. Now, let's look into how AI should be used into, in your day-to-day operation. This actually applies not only to startup, but for everyone that uses AI. First is you need to understand that AI has a jagged frontier. The jagged frontier is saying that the intelligence of the AI differs on the different types of tasks, right? So imagine that there's a circle. In the middle is the AI. And anything within the circle, the AI is good at. Anything outside the circle, the AI is not so good at. Now, it's not a real circle. It's where AI is good at. And then there are certain tasks that outside the circle where the AI is not good at. Which means if you try it out and it doesn't work well, it doesn't mean the AI will not work well across everything, right? When you try which means, you should still explore, right? At the same time, if you try something out and it works well, it doesn't mean you always have to trust the AI that it will respond correctly all the time, because it might work well on one instance but may not work well on the other instance. So that's the mindset that we should be in if we start using AI, right? So let's skip this slide. And then let's talk about human in the loop. I think this is very important. When you start using AI, whether you're building software, you're coming up with new ideas, always remember that human should always be the one in control, right? When the AI gives you a response, you always have the ability to critique it, verify whether the information is correct, and make more sensible information action out of the information you gathered from the AI. No, always, because yan nga, at mentioned here, when the LLM hallucinates, you shall be the one accountable. If you generated an accounting report and the AI reported it wrongly, you cannot blame the AI. You will blame the accountant. No, so at the end of the day, the accountant will have to be on top and make sure that they submit actual reports with the help of the AI. And then third is treat AI as a human. Just like how you converse with anyone, they make mistakes. You want to verify things. You double check and make sure that you get the right information. It's the same when you treat AI, no? So you need to be able to iterate so that you get a better response. You converse with them and assume that this is the worst AI you'll ever use. No? So this is one is saying is that if it doesn't respond well now, doesn't mean it will not work in the future. Now, you may want to try it again, maybe after a month, 2 months, it might be able to perform that function already. So it's important that we're able to continuously explore the capabilities from time to time so that we know, has it improved or not? And take advantage of that momentum in AI. If you are talking of a delegated task, which means you can prompt the AI, let it do things for you, and then you will verify, right? Because at the end of the day, you will be accountable, right? And these are tasks which are low importance and probably, doesn't require a lot of critical thinking, but can help you collect information, gather information. These are delegated tasks. And then there are automated tasks. Now, these are rules-based, repetitive, where, it can already run on its own. It's important that we identify this because we cannot be fully dependent on AI. So if we know when or which tasks are just me, which tasks I can talk to the AI, and which tasks I'll just automate, delegate to the AI, then we'll be able to maximize the benefits of using AI. Very much like when I started creating this presentation, right? When I started this presentation, establishing goals, objectives, and the audience, that has to be a just me task. Or at least I have to talk to the coordinator and understand who are the audience, and I cannot let the AI decide on that matter. Right? When I brainstorm on the outline or delivery and the storyline, then I can prompt with the AI what are some relevant topics, what are some things I want to discuss on, then you can brainstorm with it. This design is built on Canva, so there's actually no AI involved. This is more a lot on the templates and me putting in this information. And also reusing previous materials, right? So these are some person tasks, right? Which means you cannot be fully dependent on AI. We still need to think and plan ahead. When is AI useful and when is no? And then some of the images are AI generated, fine. Then I can prompt it and put own images. And of course, to deliver this message, you'll need a real person. No? So trust me, this is a real person, this is not an AI to deliver this message. So I hope that gives you a better perspective in terms of how to properly use AI, where to position your startup with the benefits of using AI, and be able to propel your startup by taking advantage of AI. That ends my presentation. If you want to learn more, you can connect with me on LinkedIn or follow me on my YouTube channel. Thank you very much.
Such an invaluable advice, and I am like, wow, rapid fire really on all the strategies. It's amazing, and I am just so happy to hear about the strategies. Now, you mentor startups through Founder Institute Manila. Can you just share a quick example of one recurring blind spot you see for those early stage founders who overlook when building AI products, and for those who are using AI products?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Carla. So Founder Institute is starting its cohort this year. We are already in our recruitment phase. So for those who want to put up, their own startup, need proper guidance, want to connect with like-minded people and also with mentors to guide them, you can check out Founder Institute Manila. Just search it over the web, enroll, sign up. There's a test that they will take and they can sign up for the program. So it's a 12-session program where we teach from ideation to customer validation to revenue models to putting in traction and even up to investor pitching. So it's an incomplete cycle where you'll be able to experience and learn from the experts what startup is. We have a lot of mentors in place. All are seasoned entrepreneurs, successful startups, where you'll be able to connect with fellow start and share the same problems and solutions and challenges.
So what is one thing that most startups overlook, Sir Alan?
Most for Founder Institute, a lot are into the ideation. So, because many people fall in love with their ideas, right? And they thought it's like, oh, this is gonna solve world hunger without even validating. No? So I think that's the first thing that we always teach them. Now, do not fall in love with your idea. You have to go out, validate, make sure people are willing to actually pay for it, in order for it to be viable. Fortunately, of course, those who undergo the program will have that validated already as part of their journey in Founder Institute.
Right. So one event that we're looking forward to, Sir Alan, diba, is the Philippine Blockchain Week, which is happening on June 10 to 11. And we're partnering with the Founders Institute as well, inviting
Yeah.
all the startups there, right, to join us in the main event on June 10 and 11. But aside from that, we're also doing hackathons this coming May 23 and 29. Just very quickly, Sir Alan, what could participants expect during those days? And maybe invite them as well to the hackathon.
Sige, thank you, Mac. A lot of things happening with Philippine Blockchain Week, Founder Institute in Philippine Blockchain Week. There are 2 sessions of hackathons. We'll be doing vibe coding, design thinking with AI. So if you are eager to put up your own startup, not sure whether the idea is valid or not sure if you can build the solution or not, you can join this program. We'll teach you how to come up with better ideas, how to validate your ideas, with the help of AI, and actually how to build your prototype so that you can have them verified at the end of this hackathon, be able to show something na in one day you'll be able to build with vibe coding and prompting with AI. And again, more importantly, meet fellow, startup peeps and share your ideas from.
Ito is that we do the hackathon, and the best startups there or the best ideas there, we would invite them to present on stage, right? On
Yun,
Philippine
no?
Blockchain the Founders Institute on the back end for the incubation. So yun yung
Right?
flow through
Yeah.
nito, the follow through. So if you're a startup, if you're a VC, you should be, registering and joining us in these events. Carla, you have a question about VC?
Yes, Alan, if you are a VC or investor, no? So what would you look for in a startup?
I think a lot of VCs now are investing heavily in AI. So you probably want to check if the team is actually has the capacity or capability to actually integrate AI into their systems. In fact, I think that's the first thing they ask all the startups.
I'm just
Carla.
wondering, because you mentioned that they have to integrate AI in their startup. Would it be the entire process or just one area lang of, let's say,
I think
marketing?
it has to be something that gives value, that's be able to help them build their moat. So it doesn't have to be the entire process. It has to be one key important process that totally makes sense to have an AI with and be able to integrate that swiftly so that there's no friction from the users in using the system.
Alan has shared some incredible insights today, Carla. Would you mind sharing the 3 key takeaways that founders could use?
Definitely. So AI is transforming the way we live and, of course, the way we learn and the way we build our company. So that is one thing that I have learned as well. So AI is also transforming industries, allowing more access to solutions. So the vibe coding allows the deployment of digital prototypes much faster than ever.
So, thank you again, Sir Alan and Carla, and to everyone who's watching and listening right now. If you're a startup founder building blockchain, Web3, leveraging AI in your startups, or if you are an investor looking for early access to Asia's most promising ventures, Founder Arena invites you to a curated investor founder gathering at the Philippine Blockchain Week this 2025 that's happening on June 10 to 11. It's the premier convergence of innovation, capital, and community. You may find our event page at www.exoasia.org. Go ahead and register.
So we are here to connect early stage founders with strategic investors. So until then, I'm Carla Cangleon.
And I'm Marco Mandante, and this is the Founders Arena podcast. See you in the next.